Hi, this is George Alger with the Two Green Energy Video Report. Speaking again with Craig Shields, the author of Renewable Energy Facts and Fantasies. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks for having me, George.
All right, so on our ongoing series of video reports regarding good business concepts in the sustainable or renewable energy sector, today I want to touch bases with you regarding one of the plans you're looking at, which has to do with biomass from construction and demo waste. Tell me about that.
Well, okay, I have to be careful that I'm not allowed to talk about this too much. I'm going to give you the overall concept, but I can't tell you, like, for instance, where in the world this is happening. But just imagine that you've got an area of the United States that produces every year 14 million tons of C&D, construction and demolition waste. So that means torn down apartment buildings and so forth and so on. That is being centralized and shipped off to landfills. The people associated with this thing are paying on the average of $75 a ton as a tipping fee. In other words, it's costing them $75 a ton to get rid of it. Here's a guy who's going to be processing that waste, about 15% of which is wood. Separating the wood from everything else, processing, turning the other rubble into something that's usable, but obviously processing the wood as biomass. So there are 9,000 BTUs in a pound of wood. So that's translatable into various other forms of energy. That's the concept of biomass, obviously. So there are biofuels, there's propanol, and there's electricity to be made out of this. So, and this happens to be in a part of the world that loves, that wants a bigger grid mix from renewable energy, so from clean energy, that will be paying 8.5, 9 cents a kilowatt hour for this energy. So this is a financial bonanza in the making.
Okay, so when you're analyzing something like this, which could potentially include other types of biomass properties that have a higher concentrate of potential biomass energy, why is this is the construction and demolition waste so desirable?
Well, the tipping fee is even if this thing doesn't turn into biomass, which it will, the whole the business plan contemplates this biomass process, but kind of as a phase two. When you think about it, even if that never happens, this is a guy turning lemons into lemonade. In other words, taking stuff that is costing somebody $75, $80 a ton and turning it into something that's of value.
Okay, so would other types of biomass waste products be more expensive than that, which is why this is so desirable?
Well, each one of these things has its own particular kind of characteristics. A good example of this is partially what's contemplated in this, and I can't remember the number, but I think it's 280 million railroad ties a year get disposed of. Now, these are creosote-soaked pieces of wood. You've seen them.
Oh, yeah.
And there are a lot of them. So you can't burn them, obviously. You use some sort of gasification or pyrolysis to extract the energy and create other valuable products like carbon black in a way that doesn't just send this garbage into the air and wind up with some carcinogenic slag. So there are processes called thermal anaerobic gasification that do this in an extremely safe and clever way. So, but think of just do the math on that thing. Think of how many pounds are in a railroad tie, multiply by 250 million, and by the number of pounds in a ton, and then by 9,000 BTUs in a pound. You get a heck of a lot of energy.
Okay, so the bottom line here in terms of business plans is or for anyone who's contemplating this type of business opportunity, you're looking for not only a cheap source, but something that can readily be converted into energy.
Yes, exactly. Well, the whole biomass thing, there's so many different flavors of this. I don't pretend to be an expert on all of them or any of them, to be honest with you, but there's so many different wrinkles on this thing, and it all tends to boil down to feedstock. I spent a lot of my life talking with extremely sophisticated investment bankers in New York, and the reason most of them don't have an appetite for biomass is simply because of feedstock. The guy goes, oh, well, this will never run out. Well, yeah, until the guy changes his mind or something happens in terms of technology or whatever. Corn ethanol is a great example of this thing. This was sold to us as a magnificent example, answer to our dependence on foreign oil. But what it is a mess in terms of ecological. We have to pump water all over the place, and the energy required to irrigate the chemical fertilizers needed that are winding up in our rivers. I mean, they're downstream, they're externalities of these things that nobody had ever thought of that turned this thing into a total debacle. But they're all related to this subject of feedstock. So is there enough of this that's going someplace that nobody wants it to anyway that can be simply turned, it's the lemons to lemonade story.
Okay, so to wrap up this show, so I understand that this is a particularly good opportunity that you're looking to get funding on, but if folks are interested in submitting to you other biomass types of ideas, any suggestions on what you might find more desirable?
There's so many flavors of this thing, it's unbelievable. Obviously, algae, there are whole bunches of people studying the subject of algae. What organisms, what processes, how's this going to work in terms of generating, people like algae because small is good. The efficiency of turning the sun's energy into harvesting the sun's energy through biomass is 30 to 50 times more efficient in algae than it is in terrestrial plants. But all of this stuff, it really does boil back to this idea of feedstock. So in other words, do not contemplate a thing where an investor is going to look at this and say, well, this thing could dry up in 3 years. I've got a commitment for 30 years in this thing, and please don't tell me that you have some kind of whimsical idea on how you're going to guarantee the presence of feedstock for that time.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Craig.
You bet. Happy to be here.
All right, this is George Alger with the 2 Green Energy Video Report. Till we meet again.